Okay, it's Sunday, which means against my better judgment, it's time to go to Reddit and see what's lurking in the hive of scum and villainy. So first off, we got some Ash tech, apparently, which basically amounts to, hey, if you shoot them and then get the dynamite to explode on them, they die. And then it was like, if you shoot them once with the hip, and then, right, if you get a headshot with the scope, they die. Wow. Earth-shattering news that if you do most of their health and then slightly more damage to them, they die, if you can believe it. Guys, I think this game has broken me. Let's see. The last 3 days I've been playing comp and have just been absolute hell for me. I've lost 400 SR in 3 days, feels bad, and 90% of my games had legitimate throwers on my team, or Smurfs on the other team. Funny how people only ever notice the Smurfs on the enemy team. Is something wrong with the matchmaking or what? Why has it always been my team with this problem? Yeah, it's funny that how it's always your team, isn't it? Is there anything I can do to recover other than just take a break? I mean, you can just keep plowing through the tilt, but you seem pretty tilted, so I would recommend not doing that. I'm completely new. What am I supposed to do? I haven't played in over a year, and I'm confused as to what to do. I'm playing fire and jumping up to shoot rockets, but people just play the shield champs and set up turrets on the train things. Are there any good beginner game modes or champions? Also, when you play, do you put your tall man on W? When you play, do you put your tall man on W? What, like your middle finger, I assume that means? Yeah. Coming from League, it feels awkward. I sort of figured this was coming from League, given the use of the words champions. Just keep playing the game until you learn what all the heroes do. I mean, when you just start playing any kind of game, any kind of game that's hero-based, the best thing to do is just kind of play until you learn what all the heroes do, because that's sort of important baseline information to have. I've lost 400 SR this season. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I play mostly projectile DPS. I started the season... Reaper's hit scan, isn't he, technically? Is Reaper projectile? I thought Reaper was hit scan. Not that it really matters either way. He has a fucking shotgun, but, you know, I thought Reaper was hit scan. Hardly matters. I started the season and currently at... I do well most game, or at least I like to think so. Well, we all like to think so. I know I shouldn't care about limbs, but I usually end gold, silver, and all my games feel super close, but never quite there. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, and I keep going down. Putting a pause on this post, tripped over my headset cord on the way to the bathroom, and my whole PC fell over. I see. How fucking light was your PC? Because I can't imagine tripping over the cord for this thing and it tipping over. There's no way. The thing weighs like fucking 1,000 pounds. No exaggeration, no sir. Well, if all the games are like super close, but you didn't win the games, the thing to do would be look back at the game, like ideally record the game and watch it back over and be like, alright, and basically try to find the opportunity where you had the chance to change the outcome of the game. Because if they were very close and you ended up losing, there was probably something in there you could have done that would have affected the outcome of the game. So it's important to me, in my opinion, to find those things, because you need to know how you can win the game if you're ever put into a similar situation again. Because that's why I like the close games that you lose are the best ones, because there's usually a point in there where you could have won the game if you did something slightly different. And that's important to find, because, and then next time you're in a similar situation, you will be better equipped to notice what you can do to win the game instead, as well as all the other like stuff. But As all the usual baseline things of, oh, I fucked up here, I fucked up there, could have done better there, all that usual stuff. But there's usually the one point that's like, if I killed that boy right here, or if I capitalized on this opportunity, we would have won instead of losing. 3,800 plus tank players. What's your experience smurfing in lower ranks? I play in games from low master to low GM. It's tank. I struggle in mid plat. I've said this so many times that mid plat to diamond is the worst SR range in the entire game, because that's where people have developed the ultra ego, where they aren't prepared to actually work with their team. That's where you'll find the most people that are just like, I'm gonna pick Widowmaker, I'm gonna pick Genji, and that's just all I'm gonna do, because I'm gonna carry these scrubs, because I should be in diamond. But they're not actually that good, so you just end up with a team of like 4 DPS, and none of the DPS are that good, so it ends up not working out. That's the SR I find that happens in the most. That's where the people have the ego, but they don't have the skill to justify the ego. So it's the worst combination of things possible. It's terrible. I hate it. My DPS isn't great, but in plat sometimes I stomp and hard carry as DPS, and other times I literally can't do anything and sandbag hard. A sandbag is more like you're deliberately not doing well, or you're deliberately trying to hide your skill, which I doubt is what is actually happening. Yeah, sometimes you crush and sometimes you don't do anything. Such is life. Such is life. When I play my main role, it's the same. Sometimes such is life. Generally, for some reason, as Zarya, I can't get as much energy. I think this is because people can be less grouped and in high rank. Bubbling the main tank is free energy. It's just harder to do that easily in low rank from my experience. I can do pretty well as Winston or Diva. Solely possible that I'm conflating different games with each other. I could be carrying consistently hard at certain heroes and I'm only remembering the ones where I played DPS, not sure. That tends to be the case also. My experience is that mid-plat to diamond is the worst possible SR bracket, and there's an amount of grinding to be done in general, particularly there, because that's where people are the worst, basically. Stand up and exercise between games? Absolutely not. No, sir. When to Diva or Zarya? It seems like Diva is the go-to for most situations, but where do you choose Zarya over Diva when playing off-tank? I would argue the exact opposite of that Zarya is usually the correct one to go for. Zarya is just more well-rounded in terms of off-tanks, and she has one of the best ults in the game. Debatably the best ult in the game. As well as being... She kills people real fucking good if you can consistently build up energy. So I would say Zarya is better to go with, because she has the ult that will carry even the most uncoordinated teams through the game. And you can kill everybody if you're Zarya. Diva's better to go with if you need to like harass a Pharah. If they have like a really big combo team, you might want to pick Diva rather, to try and eat the combo, essentially, with Defense Matrix, because Defense Matrix is really good for denying ultimates. Certain ultimates, anyway. Obviously, it's not going to do much for Dragon Blade, but something like Barrage, it stops dead. Diva's also better at diving, so if the rest of your team is going with a dive comp, you would probably want to pick Diva over Zarya most of the time, though Zarya can also work on dive comps, because you bubble the Winston when he jumps in, and then the Winston's really hard to deal with. So... Zarya's way better if you're going with a more static team comp. So if you've got a traditional Deathball-ish comp, Zarya's better. If you have really big combo ults on your team, like Barrage, Dragon Strike, Dragon Blade, these all combo well with Graviton, so they get more use out of that. Blizzard also combos well with Graviton. There's a lot of ults to combo well with Graviton, let's be real, most ults do. Diva's better for harassing Pharah, eating ultimates, or for dive comps. Zarya's better for most other situations. Zarya's just like really well-rounded. There's not many situations Zarya is a bad off-tank to pick, just because, like, she's really strong. The bubbles are really strong. You fix other people's mistakes, which is really cool. And Graviton is just really fucking strong. Yeah, you know, if I mentioned that Graviton is strong, Graviton's strong, as it turns out, you know. Need help with confidence issues in comp. It's the only mode I can play because I love the team environment and working together to reach that W. I'm currently low mid-diamond, but my issue is that when I get a Masters player in the team, I choke or lose confidence. This isn't me saying I'm afraid of the rank above, because I placed silver when I first started. Oh, congratulations, climbing up really high from silver. And I haven't had this issue until reaching mid-diamond. 70% of the time when I play master players in the team, there's always at least one on my team, on any team, rather, that is saying something negative about anyone, mainly the lower-ranked players, of course. Something like, this diamond player is trash, etc. And it's not always at me, but this has caused me to always have it in my head when I see a Masters playing. Am I doing something wrong? Are they thinking I'm trash tier? I was trying to read that as trashiteer, which is not what it says. But just not saying anything. This likely isn't the right place to ask. So, Overwatch players are trash, and I would, just by broadly speaking, everyone's trash. Worst community I've ever been a part of. You're fine, but like everybody else is trash. Everybody else, including me. Don't worry. I mean, this is all ranks do this, where they will shit-talk the rank immediately below them, even though they could be literally within 50 points of being in that rank. Quite regularly, I've seen people who are diamond, platinum, whatever, be like, if there's like a diamond player shit-talking platinum, when they are currently actually in platinum SR, but haven't been under for long enough to lose their medal yet. So that's just how people are, where they will shit talk the people immediately below them. And yeah, there is like that point right at the cusp where the two ranks like converge with each other, and you see that a lot. I find that you will see that between basically at everywhere. The bronze go into the silver, the silvers will shit talk the bronze, even though, let's be real, there's no difference. The golds will shit talk the silvers, the platinums will shit-talk the golds, the diamonds will shit-talk the platinums, the masters will shit-talk the diamonds, the grandmasters will shit-talk the masters. It's just how life is. My response would be, just don't talk to people. It's not worth the effort, frankly. Otherwise, I assume this was basically like the first Masters player you saw was an asshole, and that's basically, now it's just the negative connection in the mind. It's stupid monkey brains that we have tend to do this thing where they only really remember the negative situations better than the positive situations, so just don't talk to people. That's what I would recommend. Just don't talk to people. It's not worth the effort. The Overwatch community is just not worth conversing with. You will have a much better time playing this video game if you just don't communicate with anyone else who plays the game. Like, fucking, the team chat's not as important as people make it sound like it is. Trust me. Sombra detection is Diva. As I move up in SR, I'm running into more and more competent Sombras. I find myself standing on payload, shooting in a 180-degree circle behind us, doing Sombra detection. It finds her a lot, but leaves me with bad sense for where the rest of the team both Are there any tips for Sombra detection and management that I should be thinking about and working on? That's about the best you can really do to, like, actively look for Sombra, is just kind of, like, spray around if you have an area, a reasonably large area of effect weapon. You can do other things, like try and keep track of where Sombra went, which will give you a rough idea of where she's coming from and how long it's gonna take for her to get back into position. Because if you're fighting and you see Sombra translocate away, the way the effect goes tells you which way Sombra teleported. So if you can intuit which, like, what health pack, essentially, Sombra has teleported to, that'll give you a rough idea of where she went, and you should be able to tell roughly how long it's going to take for her to get back from that information. So you can try and sort of think, well, she teleported to a health pack that's pretty far away, so I don't need to look for her for a little while now. And then as time passes, then alright, now, so she's probably getting back roughly around now, so I'll do a check, see if she's here, blah, blah, blah. There also, if you can identify, like, who on your team Sombra is going to try and bully, that also reduces the area you have to check in. Because if there's only really, like, 1 or 2 people on your team Sombra is reasonably going to try and get, you can just sort of search around those people, and it'll effectively reduce the area you need to check in, if you can figure roughly who she's going to try and kill, because then she'll always try and do stuff from an area around them, so you have to check less places, essentially. If she's just kind of, like, appearing behind your team and just sort of, like, randomly shooting into people to, like, build up ult charge, then, like, that's about the best you can do, really, in terms of looking for Sombra. It's also one of those things where, like, if the Sombra is really good, it's very difficult to predict what she's gonna do, because she'll vary what she's doing as much as possible to try and keep you, like, off-kilter. So it's the kind of thing where, like, the really good Sombra will be very unpredictable. So, like, that's pretty much the best you can do. If the Sombra, if she's really got, like, no kind of pattern to what she's doing, that's about the best you can do, really. Sombra is one of those heroes that has a lot of options available to her, so it can make it very difficult to really stop her, especially if you're someone like a tank, because Sombra pretty much bullies the tanks around. None of the tanks particularly like playing against Sombra, because they're all pretty based around their abilities, as it turns out, and being hacked doesn't feel good. For anyone, really, but particularly for tanks. Does this game need better feedback mechanisms in regard to individual impact / skill? Fuck, this is wrong. Too long, didn't read. I wonder what could be ways to give players better feedback, while at the same time removing the overall toxicity levels and give people less fuel for the blame game. There's nothing you can really do to reduce the blame game, because that's the whole reason that we have the system we have now with the medals, because that was an attempt to reduce the blame game. Because the reason we don't have just a scoreboard is because if you have a scoreboard, it's easy to go and look at the scoreboard and go, look at that scrub all the way at the bottom. People still do it. Like, the not having a scoreboard didn't reduce that, did it? All that actually ended up happening was the people who have the medals will shit-talk the people who don't have the medals. Right? Especially if, God forbid, a tank has the silver or gold damage medal. Everybody's gonna know about it before the game's over, right? So, there's nothing really you can do to reduce the blame game, because people will always find a way to play the blame game. You can't do anything about that. The thing that I don't like about, like, the medal system is that it gives people a bad idea of what acceptable performance is, right? Because all they see is they got the gold medal and they go, I'm the best on my team as a result of that. But gold damage could easily be like 1,000 damage 4 minutes into the game, which is absolutely appallingly bad damage for that point in the game, right? So people, like, they have really fucking skewed opinions of what good scores are as a result, because they just see gold and they go, it's good. The gold can easily still be trash. It's just you're the least trash out of all of them. And it also leads to situations where, like, the person with, like, the silver damage medal, like, the Zarya might have the silver damage medal, and the soldier might be literally, like, 20 points below her, right? So, but all the Zarya sees is, I have silver, that means one of the DPS doesn't have silver, and that means they're trash, right? So, it having just the medals rather than a scoreboard leads to really fucking stupid situations like that, because people don't know how to interpret data, essentially. So that's the thing I have with the medal system about giving feedback. You can't reduce the blame game, though. Like, any attempt to reduce the blame game will do no such thing. People will find a way to play the blame game. Doesn't matter what you do, they'll find a way. Because you go, alright, well, we'll roll eliminations and assists into one stat, because then you can't shit-talk someone for only having assists instead of kills. No, people just conflate eliminations as kills. Right? Because frequently, people say kills instead of eliminations. Eliminations is kills and assists. But, so, like, if we just squeeze it into one, the DPS who has all assists, hey, it's this, they have all eliminations instead. No, people just read it as kills, so it doesn't matter. People still do the same thing. You don't have gold eliminations, that means you don't have gold kills. That means you're bad, if you're a DPS player, right? If you try taking out the scoreboard, doesn't matter. Just means that the people with the medals will shit-talk the people who don't have the medals, because the people who don't have the medals are obviously bad. Even though the people who are actually in competition with the medals is usually extremely small, right? Like, the off-tank can go, I have silver damage. That means one of the DPS is trash. Well, there's only 3 people on the team who realistically do damage out of all of us, so it's not that shocking that you can have the silver damage medal. Or, like, when one of the DPS goes, I have gold damage, you scrub. There's one other DPS on the team and like an off-tank who are like in serious competition for that medal most of the time. Like, you having gold damage isn't impressive because you're not competing against half the team for that medal. So it's not all that impressive, really. There's no way to reduce the blame game, and I think the game already does about as much as it can to give you feedback for like how well you're doing. Like, what else is it gonna do? Like, what other feedback can you feasibly put into the game for it to go, you did great, champ. You're carrying the game. What can you do? Is it going to throw up a little fucking fireworks display every time you kill somebody? Is it gonna just give out an MVP medal every single game because like somebody needs to feel like they're the best? Like, there's not much more you can do to really increase overall feedback, at least not that I can think of. If you got a better idea for it to increase feedback, by all means, but I can't think of anything, and, like, there's no way to feasibly reduce the blame game. That's just how human beings are. They don't want to admit they're the problem. Massive losing streak, any idea? We talk about this every week. It sucks, it feels bad, it's part of life, you just gotta kind of muscle through it. Gold damage, but no medal for limbs is Soldier 76. What can I do to improve? Is this a problem? If it's a problem, how do I improve it at all? So, yeah, it probably is a problem. What a committal statement. It's probably a problem. It is a problem because that means that you're doing a lot of damage, but none of it's actually, or very little of it is at least meaningful damage because it's not converting into kills, which is the goal. So if you have gold eliminations, or gold damage but no eliminations medal, that basically means you're just kind of firing damage out there randomly, in all likelihood, without really thinking too much about what you're doing. Like, you're probably just spending like a lot of time shooting into tanks without really taking an opportunity to try and like secure a kill on somebody. So it's probably a matter of like target prioritization. Because it's very easy to do damage, it's difficult to get kills, because these two things are not the same. Like, a Junkrat will frequently have gold damage, but there's no guarantee he has gold eliminations. Because Junkrat just does a lot of incidental damage that doesn't necessarily convert into anything, because he's just kind of spamming into an area to stop people moving through it. He's doing a lot of chip damage to people, but he's not actually, like, killing people necessarily. So it's probably a matter of, like, target prioritization and possibly positioning, because it might mean that, like, you're doing a lot of damage, but you're never in a position where you can actually finish off the person because they, like, break line of sight to you or something like that. So I'd say worry less about just, like, firing into the enemy team, and try and make a more concerted effort to, like, burst down one target, because that could also be it. Switching targets a lot is another reason that you could do a lot of damage but not actually kill anybody. Just kind of, like, commit to one target, try and kill them, rather than just sort of throwing damage out there at people. which is quite easy to do with Soldier. He's someone who can just sort of spray stuff out there and like get decent results out of it. So like try and not switch targets, try and actually work on like getting a kill rather than just like doing damage. Best and most versatile tank in Season 13. So the best is most likely going to be Reinhardt, as usual, because Reinhardt has always been good, despite what people would tell you. Because it turns out just having that big old shield between you and the enemy team is real good, especially if your team isn't super coordinated, or aren't that good. Turns out, Reinhardt's always been pretty good, and his ult's really good as well. Most versatile tank is probably going to be Roadhog, because it's looking like these buffs are going to work out pretty good for him. So I suspect Roadhog's going to be able to deal with the most situations by himself. Otherwise, it'll be Zarya, as it usually is. But the best one is probably going to be Reinhardt still. Most versatile, I think, will go between Roadhog and Zarya. Depends on how the Roadhog buffs like ultimately work out. Though they're looking like they're going pretty well for Roadhog so far. I've dropped about 300 SR. Man, this question's come up a lot today, hasn't it? I've dropped about 300 SR since this season started, and I can't figure out what I'm doing wrong. Review to some VoDs from me. Hey, send me some VoDs. Looking for Doomfist playstyles and when to use them. I don't really know enough about Doomfist to really answer that question in a meaningful way. Or I don't know enough about playing Doomfist, I should say. I need some tips for Ryan. I'm fairly decent, but I know for sure that I played too aggressively. I'm already working on holding myself back on charges and game sense for when to go in. Any other good tips? Those are about the big ones, really, as it's usually holding back the charges, and being more deliberate about engaging. Yeah, like those are that's like the big one, really, is holding back on charges. Even like sometimes when you're in a fight, the enemy team can be, or like it can still be right, even like in the middle of a fight, to not swing at people, even if given the opportunity. Even like, unless you can swing on like the 200 health Mercy, by all means, swing on that bitch and try to kill her. But like, there can be a lot of situations in fights where you could swing into them, but it's still the correct decision to hold your shield up to block for your team. Because it's one of those things where like, if you can stop your DPS, like if their team can't kill your team, right? If they can't kill your DPS will win the fight for you. So, don't necessarily be like, I have to do damage when given the opportunity. Still worry more about like keeping your team alive than anything else, because that's your main job as a tank, is protecting your team. The one example there's like always, this is a fairly fringe situation, but it's a fairly clear illustration, is like, suppose you're playing Reinhardt, you have a soldier with you, and you're just playing, and you're trying to fight another soldier, right? What a lot of Reinhardt players will do in that kind of situation is they will run after that soldier, holding their left click down, trying to shoot the soldier. What you should actually do is just hold your shield in front of your soldier, because now your soldier physically can't lose the fight anymore, right? He can no longer lose because that soldier can't hit your soldier. So your soldier will now win that fight by default because he can't lose. He can't take any damage because your shield's in the way. But what a lot of people will do is they will run after the soldier trying to hit him, even though the soldier can like get away from you. So it's that kind of thing where like, just try to remember that your main goal is keeping your team alive, not necessarily killing the enemy team yourself. To flex or not to flex, I've always said it's better to focus on like a couple people. Feels like I lose more when I flex Phil, but when I play what I want, I win more. Is this a bad mentality? It's always going to be better to be like really good at a couple things than just average at everything, right? Like if you flex and fill frequently, you're like going to frequently be playing a hero you're not that good at. You might be okay at them, but you're not usually going to be great at them, because if you're flexing and filling regularly, you're not putting in enough practice on heroes to actually get like really good at them. So even if you do want to be like a really flexible player, I still think it's better to be able to just play like 1 or 2 heroes in every category and just like focus on them. Because it's better to be really good at a couple things than just average at everything. And I say that every week, so I'm not going to belabor it anymore. Is this bad hero pool for me? Probably not. See, my hero selected pool: McCree, Ashe, when released, Ana, and Zen. And you should put a tank in there, at least. Like, you should put a tank into that list, but that's fine. You know, whatever. I'm below 40% win rate by now, but I'm hardly losing SR. What's going on? Deleted. Well, it means, great. Probably means your MMR is still high enough that it's not really affecting it, or your in-game stats are good enough that it's reducing your losses. Is it just me, or does Zen seem like a soft throw pick in today's meta? I mean, every meta, there's always the one support people pick, and they go, that one's a throw pick now. Has almost never actually been the case. His ultimate's still really good. The thing is, it's just hard to survive right now, which has always been Zenyatta's issue, is that he's got very limited ways of defending himself, particularly since Doomfist is so popular right now. Roadhog is looking pretty set up to, like, temper Doomfist, and I believe some Doomfist nerfs are about to come out. So it might not be so much of an issue anymore, because I think the Doomfist is, like, the main issue Zenyatta's having right now. Ana being more popular does also create issues, because it makes it more likely for her bio-grenade to fuck up Transcendence, which has always been Zenyatta's, like, big thing, is Transcendence. Discord Orb's also good, but his ability to negate other people's ultimates is good. So Ana being popular right now is also an issue, but I think the main issue is really Doomfist. So we'll see how that one goes in the near future. I suspect it won't be much of an issue in the near future. Especially if they also do nerf Doomfist. Though Ashe might make it even worse, because Zenyatta's never been hard to hit, has he? So Ashe might even make it worse for him when she comes out. We'll see. It's hard to predict the future, you know, but I don't think he's going to be that bad off soon, and I don't think he's that bad now. It is harder to play him right now, though. I'll give you that one. Why isn't Mei played more frequently? She has a stigma attached to her, and it's kind of that simple. Mei's always been, like, okay. She's been, like, she's niche, obviously, and there are, like, some situations where she's just not worth picking. Like, there are some maps that are really bad for Mei. Generally the more open ones. Always the more open ones. I don't know why I'm saying generally, as if I'm somehow afraid of that opinion. It's always the more open maps that Mei is not that good on. Also the ones where, like, Pharah is better on, which is usually also the more open maps. And she is, like, countered by certain heroes like Pharah, because she just can't really do much against those heroes. The main issue, though, is that Mei's one of those heroes that has, like, a stigma attached to her in two directions. There are a lot of people that think Mei is just trash and not worth picking, but there are also people who vehemently hate Mei and will shit-talk anyone just for picking Mei to begin with, because they just personally hate playing against Mei, because they never learned how to position. So there's, like, two different kinds of stigma attached to Mei that make people less inclined to pick her. Because, like, people generally don't like picking heroes that people think are trash for obvious reasons. They're afraid of getting shit-talked on for it. But also, like, if there's a conception that a hero or a character is, like, really good or really annoying or overpowered, that often puts people off picking them at the same time. I know this happens to me because, like, I'm gonna go back over to fighters again real quick, because I picked Bardock because I really like Bardock as a character in Dragon Ball, right? And when I picked him, he wasn't all that popular. Suddenly he got really popular, And then suddenly I was like, I don't want to pick Bardock now because I don't want to seem like I'm just riding the wave of, like, people picking him because he's overpowered, right? So, like, there's two kinds of stigma that put people off picking someone, and Mei has both those stigmas attached to her from different people, right? So I think that's part of it, as well as her being overall fairly niche, because, like, she gets countered pretty hard by some heroes, and she's bad on some maps as well, so it kind of leads to this thing where people are afraid of picking Mei for a few different reasons. How do I properly use Coalescence? I'm never really sure where to pop Moira's ultimate. I realize it's healing first, damage second ultimate, and I love when my team and enemy team are lined up. Yeah, that's part of it, is finding the angle in the team fight so that you can do both, because it's very rare that you're in a position where you can only do one with Coalescence. You just sometimes have to find a little bit more of an unusual angle for it. And sometimes it requires a little bit of extra thought into positioning. I remember there was one game we watched like a long time ago, and it was on King's Row's second checkpoint. Someone used Coalescence towards the end of the checkpoint. You know, there's the checkpoint, and then there's the street that goes back up next to the bar. Not like the same street the bar is on, but the one next to it going up to the point. They were ulting down that street. And I was like, if you go into the side alley over here, like if you go forward slightly and go into the side alley, you would be able to get both teams with it, because they're going backwards in front of the bar now and your team's trying to follow them. But because you're behind your team further up the street, you're only hitting yours. If you just go into the side alley, you'll hit both, because you'll get your team chasing and the enemy team retreating. And the person afterwards, when that blew my mind, because I had never thought about positioning Coalescence in that kind of way, essentially. So, like, it's very rare you can't get both teams with it. It's just sometimes you have to position a little bit unusually to actually hit both of them. Like, there are a lot of situations like Volskaya's second checkpoint where it will be easier for you to get a good Coalescence if you go to the other side of the objective than you're currently on. Just because, like, of the way fights tend to break out around that point. So you sometimes have to do, like, a little bit of an unintuitive movement, but it's usually possible to hit both teams. And that's the goal with, like, most Coalescences, like, get both teams with it. So you'll frequently use it just to try and keep your team alive if things are going badly, but you can usually hit both with it. As for how much value should I expect to get out of it? So overall, your Coalescence is only a meh ultimate overall. The thing is that Moira builds her ult insanely fast, especially if you're, like, really, like, optimized with, like, how you're chucking your balls out and doing damage and stuff like that. So each individual Coalescence doesn't necessarily net you a lot of value, but if you use Coalescence like 9 fucking times over the course of a round, no exaggeration, completely feasible number, then you've ended up getting a lot of value out of it, because you just used your ultimate a fuck lot more times than the enemy team did. And just generally speaking, if you get to use your ultimate more times than the enemy team used their ultimates, you probably won, because you just ulted more than them. Turns out ultimates are pretty strong. So each individual Coalescence you shouldn't necessarily expect to get huge value out of, but over a long span of time, over the course of an entire game, if you get to use Coalescence a lot, you'll get a lot of value out of it cumulatively. Usually with Coalescence, I'll use it just to try and, like, engage a fight, because it does damage and it does healing. So your team will, like, go in, and it gets kind of a sound barrier-esque effect, where your team can start to go in, and they have this buffer of healing to help them go in as well, right? It's not the same as having a barrier, certainly, but the healing, the large healing from Coalescence when they're going in, still covers the approach. So there's that. And also, when you use Coalescence, that usually prompts the enemy team to start retreating. Because they don't, like, nobody wants to just stand there taking damage, right? So that'll usually prompt the response from both teams. Your team will start trying to go in, and the enemy team will start trying to fall back. So I'll usually use it before a fight started, but I can tell a fight is about to start, or we're in a position to start a fight because we have the advantage one way or the other. I'll just use it to start a fight, essentially. Using it in response is not, like, in response to the enemy team's aggression is never as good, because it's not really a good defensive ultimate, and it's not really a good offensive ultimate. So if you're using it in response to the enemy team doing something, that kind of already means you're on the back foot. And because it's not excellent at damage or defense, it doesn't usually help turn the tide that well. So if you can use it when you have the advantage, that usually ends up being better. At the very least, it prompts a response from the enemy team, which will be like, even if it's just like the other Moira used her Coalescence, right? And the enemy team didn't do anything while either Coalescence was going on, you still bought your team time, right? So, it's the kind of thing I'll just use it to start a fight. That's almost always what I do with Coalescence. I'll use it before the fight has started, but I can tell one is about to start, and try to make something happen like that. It's not like a great ultimate. The thing is just that Moira can build her ult really fucking fast, because that she gets to do a lot of damage and a lot of healing. So you cumulatively over a whole course of a game rack up a lot of value. What am I doing wrong? Can't put anything in play. I managed to climb 100 SR every season until I hit a wall at 2,900. I mean, eventually... Okay, so you will also always plateau eventually, right? That's just how it is. The trick is there will always come a point where you kind of like hit a wall and you feel like you aren't improving. That's the hardest part to push through. You'll always plateau skill-wise eventually, and then identifying the thing, like identifying what you really need to do to get past that often takes a very long period of time. So if like you do climb, but then start stalling out somewhere, like, it's not necessarily the end of the world. It's just, because that's reasonably what will happen to you. You just kind of have to try and like push through that. Like, there's a lot of stuff you kind of have to try and push through when you're playing the game competitively. I communicated and filled when I needed to. I made sure I had 2 characters in every category. I could play at high level. I made sure the others I could play decent at least. I played Lucio and Anna, Ryan Diva, Tracer and Widow. Then I fell to, couldn't climb back up. I did everything I could to improve myself. I watched back my game to see what I did wrong. Also, you should look for the opportunities you didn't see in the game so that you're better equipped to see those opportunities in the future. Don't just look... Whenever you're watching your footage, don't just look for the things you did wrong. You should obviously look for those things, but you should also look for the opportunities you didn't see at the time. It's usually easier to see opportunities when you are detached from the game, because then you can look at things more broadly, because you don't have to worry about like actually playing the game now. So you should also look for the opportunities you didn't see at the time, then you're more likely to see them in the future. Don't just look for what you did wrong. Do look for what you did wrong, but also look for the missed opportunities. Looked up tricks for my main characters in these categories. I hate blaming my team, and I usually take the defeat as my fault because I mostly play healer. I haven't played a single gun. What's the down? I feel like I've hit my limit. So again, you'll always hit a point that you do plateau at, and that will be difficult to push through. But like, you can do it. Like, I don't believe that anybody has like a hard upper limit on how skilled they can be. It's just that there will always come a point where it's difficult to improve further. But you still can. It's just harder. The problem is that people usually get disheartened at that point, because once you do plateau, there's going to be a long period in time which can be very long, depending on how long it takes for you to personally to improve. Because if you personally don't improve that fast anyway, once you hit the point that you plateau, that's going to take a really long time to push through, right? Even if you learn really quickly, if you like hit the point you plateau at, that can still take a long time to push through. I don't believe anybody has a hard upper limit on their skill. It just is... People, once they do plateau, tend to get too disheartened to continue, which is basically like what I'm reading here. Like, I didn't play much comp because I felt like I hit my wall. And I stopped playing comp, essentially. Like, that's the thing. You have to keep doing it. It's gonna feel like you're just treading water a lot. But, like, eventually, you'll push through it. It's just, it might take a long time. You just have to have the commitment to push through it. I don't believe that anybody is just like, this is the hard cap on your skill. I don't think that's how people are. It's just that you need to be committed to push through that. So it's not necessarily that you're doing anything wrong. It's just you need to have, like, the dedication. You need to want it, essentially. You need to want to improve, which will help you keep motivated to pushing through it. Trouble rushing, pressuring a target as Lucio. I don't know enough about Lucio to really answer that kind of question in depth, to be honest with you. Lucio is one of those heroes. Like, Lucio is probably the hero I know the least about overall. I just hate playing Lucio. He's like the hero I've played the least of out of all of them. Are there leagues of players? I don't know. I don't know. Let's see. What are some things a main tank can do to enable a feeding off tank to do better? Well, it really depends on, like, how the person's feeding. Because if they essentially just, like, run off ahead of everybody and get killed, like, there's really not a lot you can do to stop that one. You can, like, try and keep pace with them. Like, you can try positioning more aggressively so you can keep pace with them to try and, like, slow down their feeding. But, like, there can be a lot of situations where you really can't do anything. Depends on what they're doing. If the Winston is just always jumping in ahead of you, I know Winston's also a main tank. If Winston's just jumping in ahead of you, like 1,000 miles ahead of you, what can you do, right? If D.Va's up there, right, she's just going in, constantly jumping in on the enemy team, and you're playing Reinhardt, and she just goes in, she just boosts into fucking 6 people, right? Well, I guess she's fucking dead, isn't she, right? If the dude keeps walking through your shield and, like, getting hooked and killed, like, there's only so much you can do. When playing a Zarya, I can do well with a Rein, who's clearly not making. In general, it feels easy to compensate for Winstons and Reins as an off-tank by following them, and you can eat grass, block shadow, but how does it work in reverse, where you are more dependent on support? When playing Rein and the Zarya is just not on point with her bubbles. Okay, so if it's like that kind of arrangement, basically you just play more passively. If, like, the Zarya isn't very good at managing, like, the bubbles, you just basically have to play more passively, because you can't, like, if you can play a lot more aggressively, if you can rely on the Zarya bubbling you to follow up on your aggression. If the other off-tank is not following up on your aggression, that basically just means you need to slow down. That means you need to play a little bit more at their speed, which will be slower in that kind of situation. When playing Winston, your D.Va keeps feeding her mech amongst other... Like, if the D.Va is jumping in way ahead of you and you're like Winston or Reinhardt, there's nothing you can do about that. Like, if she just keeps going in way too deep and dying, what are you gonna do? Fucking charge after her and try and keep her alive? No, you'd only die with her. Like, there's not much you can do about that one, really, specifically. What can you do in these situations? You're playing with a D.Va who is not throwing, but has bad habits and awareness. How do you, as Winston, play in a way that enables her to stay in mech? All you can do is try and play, like, more aggressively, but that will often result in you dying with her. If she's just jumping into 6 people way ahead of you, like, what are you gonna do about it? Are you gonna also jump into 6 people? You'll probably die if your team, especially if your team can't follow up. Like, that specific kind of situation is difficult for you to do anything to. The best you could really do is try and communicate with the D.Va and try to get her to slow down, basically. But that will be extremely hit or miss, depending on how the person is. So, it's like, Zarya's not bubbling you and following up, that you just play slower. If the other person, if the diva is playing too fast, like, you can try and follow her, but you'll probably end up dying, also, if she's doing it, like, really bad. So, it's one of those things that'll be difficult for you to deal with. The best thing you can do is just try and talk to her, basically. Throws aren't as common as people think and shouldn't be used as an excuse for not climbing. Agree. Imposter syndrome. It feels like I don't deserve my rank even though I've been there for so long. I dropped a good 400 SR since I was either doing with a friend who doesn't play very often or came back after a long play. I managed to climb back to where I am before several times. I thought maybe I was just carried to diamond, still bothers me. So, like, I've said this before, it's extremely unlikely you're going to get carried to a rank that's dramatically above you, right? By accident, right? Like, you pay somebody, certainly. But, like, it's very unlikely that you just playing the game will get carried to a rank that's drastically above your skill. It can happen, but it is very, very unlikely to happen. And if you've done it, if you've climbed to that rank several times, there's no way. There's no way you have accidentally ended up at a rank way above you, like, multiple times. That doesn't happen. It's very unlikely to happen once, let alone more than that. So, like, don't worry about it that much. This is such a common thing where people are like, I don't deserve the rank I'm at, I'm too high. Because they, like, usually at the point they start to plateau, they're like, I'm too high, clearly, I can't win games up here, at least not consistently. I mean, you got there. You got there. It's very unlikely you got there by accident. It can happen. It's happened to some people. But it's very, very unlikely to happen. I would say it's a less than 1% chance that it's going to happen to you. If you're at a rank and you can get there, if you can stay there or you can get there multiple times, you do probably deserve to be there. It's highly unlikely you got carried there by accident. Solo queue or group queue. I would say the best amount of people to group with is 2 or 3, because after that you start getting matched against like full teams or very close to, and at that point you start to need to coordinate a lot more. Also, like, if you're queued with, like, if you got 4 people or 5 people and there's 1 or 2 people who are left out, then they tend to automatically be slightly upset about that, because people are very delicate like that. Because they see the pre-made and they go, fucking pre-mades, am I right? Nudge, nudge, all that. If you like duo or trio, I'd say that's about the best you can do. You can solo, that's fine. But, like, I think you statistically have a better chance of climbing duo or trio, because you just have more consistent elements in your team, theoretically, provided you're queuing with people who are consistent. Otherwise, consider making friends who are better at the video game. Is it just me or does Zun see... we just saw this. I feel like I'm not productive to the team. Even if I can put up quite a few kills, I can't get any medals. I'm quite a new player at 10 hours and still trying everything. Don't even worry about it that much, dude. Just keep playing the game. You've barely started playing. You don't need to worry about it that much yet. You're still kind of learning the game at that point, let alone getting into, like, the real, like, min-maxy stuff. Don't worry about it. Just, like, play the game. Learn more. Learn more baseline stuff. You don't need to worry about it that much that early on. I'm mid-plat, obviously trying to climb. The 2 things specifically. Counting the enemy comp. I assume that means countering the enemy comp. And tracking ults. The cat's coming. What's up? My son. Here he is. It's very unlike him to show up part way through anymore. He used to do it a lot. Doesn't do it so much anymore. Hello, my child. So, I assume that means countering the enemy comp, not counting the enemy comp, because I don't know what counting the enemy comp would mean. Maybe keeping track of how many people are dead. In which case, the best thing I can say to you is keep track of the kill feed. In terms of countering the enemy comp, the best thing to do is, like, try and identify the thing that's giving your team trouble, and then try to play around that as much as possible. Like, if the enemy team has a Pharah, and your team clearly can't kill the Pharah, consider changing to, like, D.Va, so that you can harass the Pharah more, or something like that, right? Try to identify the thing that is causing your team the most trouble, and then counter it. It might be something a little bit more, like, hidden than, like, the Pharah is killing everybody. It might be, like, we can't seem to kill anybody, and then you need to identify, is that because my team isn't doing enough damage, or is my team, like, is my team low damage, or is my team unable to do damage because of something on their team? Like, is their tank, like, is their Reinhardt just, like, holding his shield up constantly and not letting my team do damage? In which case, consider changing to somebody who's better at breaking barriers, or maybe someone who can crowd control the Reinhardt to, like, fuck them up, basically. Is it because they just have too much healing? Maybe they have Ana Moira, and I just can't, my team just can't seem to do any damage to them because they just get healed through it. In which case, consider changing to somebody that increases your team's overall damage, like Zenyatta, or that can prevent their healing, like Ana. Particularly if they're running, like, goats, right? The best thing you can usually do is pick Ana and just fat anti-grenades all day, and then what are they going to do about it? They're going to be sad that they're purple, basically. So that's for that. As for tracking ults, the most baseline thing, because this comes up fairly frequently now, the people have been, like, really concerned about tracking ults lately. I'm so glad that people have stopped worrying about their sensitivity as much, and they're worrying more about, like, how do I track ults better? Which is a more productive question to ask than, is this a good sensitivity? Baseline, the best thing you, like, the easiest thing you can do to help track ults is look at the kill feed and go, I've seen Soldier pop up in there, like, 3 times now, and I haven't seen him use his ultimate. He probably has his ultimate by now. Stuff like that. Or just, you know, how long has it been since I saw somebody use their ultimate, right? If it's been, like, a minute since you saw somebody use their ultimate, they have their ultimate, in all likelihood. Someone might not, like, if it's a Zarya who's having a really bad game, she might not actually have her ultimate after a minute. But if you haven't seen someone use their ult in a minute, they probably have their ultimate. You can try and keep track of things a little bit more closely in a fight, because suppose a team fight happens and nothing really of much gets accomplished. Like, you lose, like, you're attacking, you lose a dude, and then or two, and then you end up backing out. And it wasn't like a blowout fight either way. It just kind of like, we tried to push in, we kind of got wiped, and then got pushed out. Nobody really used any ultimates. Think about, like, did their soldier just sit really far back shooting at us, like, the entire time, completely uncontested? In which case, that fight happened, and he probably got his ult by the end of it, even if he didn't end up using it, right? Because the fight ended up fizzling out before he had to, but, like, he was uncontested the whole time. He probably built up his ult during that exchange. If it's someone like Reinhardt, you can try and be, like, you can try and really count it specifically, because it's like, if he meleeed somebody, that's 7% ult charge. If he hit somebody with Fire Strike, that's 9% ult charge? 9 or 10% ult charge if he Fire Struck somebody. I don't know the exact numbers. It's in that range. That's good enough. So you can try and track it like, I saw Reinhardt run up and swing at my Reinhardt 3 times. So you go, alright, well, 7 times 3, that's how much ult charge he got off of that exchange with the Reinhardt right there. Plus however much he was ambiently building up at the time, but you don't need to worry about it that much. You can, like, or you watch the Fire Strike cut through 6 people, you go, you got half his ult off that, right? Like, so with some heroes, they build it up in really predictable increments. So, and they're like, the way, like, their attacks are very obvious when they connect. So someone like Reinhardt, you can try and track it really closely like that. But, like, baseline, just go, he's showed up in the kill feed a lot, and I haven't seen him use his ultimate, so he's probably got it. It's been a minute, roughly, since I saw that dude ult. He's probably got his ultimate. And that kind of stuff is usually enough. And then you can try and track it a little bit more closely with, like, thinking who was uncontested and stuff like that. But, like, you don't usually need to get, like, that into it. You start needing to at, like, the very higher end SR brackets, but, like, that, just, like, the more baseline stuff is usually good enough. Let's see, time for PC upgrade. PC, look, I'm not a tech guy. I don't know. What's the best way to break the choke on the first point Hanamura? When I see Hanamura flash up on an attack, I get flashback of all the Mei walls, widow snipes, and other obliterations on attack I've seen. What's the best way to break the choke? Which heroes are best suited to this point? So it kind of depends on what's going on. If it's the Mei thing, you can try and pick like more aggressive team comps, because then you can just all jump in together. You can try and bait the Mei wall out by like stepping through the choke point, and then right as you think she's about to wall you off, you step back and then, hey, get this guy. And then you can step back and, hey, now you're on top of the wall instead of behind the wall, and you get to live. If you do that one badly, you die. If it's like the snipers are holding you back, changing to a dive comp is always going to be better. The best thing you can usually do, there's like 2 consistent ways to break through a choke point to me. And the most consistent way is just throw 6 ultimates at it. If you just throw 6 ultimates at something, you will have a high likelihood of winning the fight, provided you use those ultimates correctly, and you had, like, the initiative. If you use 6 ults reactionarily, like, then maybe not. But if you have, like, the initiative and you throw 6 ults at them, you probably won. It's just difficult to get people to coordinate their ults that much. The other thing is try to get a flanker, because if you can distract some members of their team and get them to pull away from the front, that makes it so much easier to get through. If you have a flanker who can draw 2 people away from the choke point, it is so much easier to get through the choke point then. The thing is, you have to take advantage of the opportunity that flanker created, right? You can't, like, pussyfoot around. You have to be like, 2 people left, let's go. And you have to, like, go. The issue usually is that people are too afraid to do something aggressive, or they don't know when they can do something aggressive, right? We've seen it all. We've all been stood behind that Reinhardt that just doesn't want to walk through the doorway. Like, you have to be able to find the moment where you say, go. Because that's usually the issue, is nobody spots the moment where they say, go. Because if just standing around posturing at the choke point for 4 minutes doesn't do anything. You just sat around posturing at the choke point for 4 minutes. You have to try and get in the door. Stage 2, like getting in the door is stage 1, right? You have to survive once you get through the door. So then the other part of getting through the choke point is deciding what you're gonna do once you get through the doorway, right? And with, like, Hanamura specifically, usually the worst thing you can do is just run straight to the objective. Because just think about, like, how Hanamura is, right? Where it's, like, it's the rock garden, so it's the cube. And the gate's down here. If you're trying to push, and then the objective is, like, over here, right? That's the objective. I know. It's incredible artistic rendition, isn't it? So if you try and go through the gate, and you just run straight through the middle, you can be getting shot from over here, you can be getting shot from over here, you can be getting shot from over there, you can be getting shot from everywhere. So you're just trying to, like, run through this gauntlet, right? It's like you're trying to run up the fucking Normandy beaches, right? Breaches, fucking hell. It's like you're trying to run up the Normandy beaches on D-Day. This is fucking hard, right? You're getting shot at from everywhere. You got no cover because you're running up a fucking rock garden. It's not exactly fantastic. I got up high ground up there. Oh, God, I gotta get so far to get to those people, right? Like, that's usually the worst thing you can do. So there's a couple things now. Is you can try and get your team to go around, right? If you can get them to go around a different way, usually you'll try and go through that way, because that's just like the quickest route, and there's cover that way. So if you can get in that door and then go around, you're in a better position to attack the checkpoint, because you can't be getting attacked from multiple locations, and you can just kind of walk at them, right? We're like behind a Reinhardt shield. They have less places to attack you from, less good angle, all that. Whereas just running through the rock garden is a lot harder. There's another thing you can do. This is like the easiest way to throw defense on the first checkpoint, is that, like, suppose you got like 2 people stood over here, and then you got like 3 people stood over here, and you got 1 person, like a Zenyatta, standing on the objective, right? You can go, alright, let's fucking crush these three people. Or let's fucking crush these two people over here, right? Because if they start splitting up, if they start going to different sides of the rock garden, it makes it a lot easier to kill one of those sides if you can get your team to, like, jump on that side together, right? So if you go, oh, there's a couple people over there and a couple people over there, you just clap one side as hard as you can, and then they die so fast because they were isolated and you had 6 people jump on. You probably had like 4 or 5 people jump on those 2 people realistically, but you know, you had your team jump on those 2 people, and then that makes it a lot easier to clean up the rest of the fight because you killed those ones really quick. So now you just have to clean up the rest. Simultaneously, like, also, if like you're getting pincered, that's the best thing you can do, is pick one side of the pincer and collapse on that side as hard as possible. Because if you start, like, splitting your attention between both of the, like, to both sides of the pincer attack, that just means, like, you got 3 people fighting 3 people and 2 people fighting 2 people or something like that, right? Whereas, if 2 people coming from over there, 4 people coming from over there, you go, those 2 people, kill them. Now, those 4 people, kill them. That's not the best thing you can do if you're being, like, pincer attacked as well. So, like, don't run straight through the rock garden once you get through the gate. That's really hard to do. Go, like, left or go right. You'll probably go right. That's just, like, the way most people are prepared to go. So, like, you'll probably go right. It's a better angle to attack from. So it's, like, try and take the initiative. You gotta try and find an opportunity to get through the gate, and when you see the opportunity, you have to take the opportunity. Try and then, like, decide what you're gonna do after that. Don't just, like, kind of amble around. Don't you get through the choke point, we're going this way. Now, let's all go that way. Or try and, like, spot, like, where there's less people, and then try to crush those people. And then that makes it easier to attack the checkpoint. And that's not just Hanamura. Like, that applies to all other things, like, all other checkpoints as well. Particularly for 2CP maps, because they're all of a similar layout. Or a similar construction, not a similar layout. Like, the theory behind those maps is usually the same. It's just that's, like, Hanamura specifically. It's like the rock garden is, like, running up the rock garden. It's really, it's a lot of these maps are that way, where, like, Horizon, we don't just run straight down the center to the first checkpoint, do we? Because that would be stupid. We're running through this ditch. They're up there on the fucking high ground shooting at us the whole time, right? No, we go up to the right or to the left, don't we? We don't just go straight down the center. Same concept on Hanamura, it's just you feel like you can run straight to the checkpoint on the gate because it's right there. It's so close, I could just run a few feet and be there. Whereas Horizon, it's like, I gotta run through the fucking Death Star trench to try and get there, so it's less appealing. Hanamura is the same concept, it's just a smaller distance to go. Running straight at the objective is usually the worst route. There's almost always a better way to go around the sides that will give you a better angle of attack. But that's, like, Hanamura specifically. The Hamster Man. I don't really have... I don't have any Hammond tips either. I don't like Hammond is the main issue with that one right there. What to do? What do? When team comp is super bad and me switching to counter the dominating enemy would make it even worse. Well, sometimes that... Oh, God, that's so fucking long. So, sometimes switching will be the correct response. Sometimes your switch will make your team comp overall worse. But if that person on the enemy team is really, like, the main issue your team is having, you removing that person from the equation might be worth the offset of making your team comp worse. Like, if you change to a DPS off of a tank, but, like, you effectively shut down the thing that was giving your team the entire trouble, right? Like, their Pharah is dominating the game. You're playing D.Va, you can't really deal with her as D.Va. You change to Widowmaker. If you now completely shut that Pharah down, that's probably good enough. You might have made your team comp overall worse, but if it really was just that hero that was the thing that was holding you down, then that might be good enough to offset the balance. Otherwise, like, try and keep it, like, within the same rough area so that you aren't necessarily crippling your team in one regard. So, if you're playing an offlane, if you're playing, like, Zarya, and, like, the D.Va's, the Pharah is wrecking your team, you don't need to immediately go to Widowmaker. You can try going to D.Va, because then that will make it easier to deal with Pharah still anyway, but you haven't, like, sacrificed a tank to try and deal with the Pharah, right? That might be enough. So try, like, if you're being dominated, try and keep it by a hero on the enemy team. Try and switch to a counter that's within the same role, if possible. So that you're not compromising your team comp too much. Compromising your team comp is, like, an awfully worded sentence. English is fucking stupid. So try and keep it in the same role, but, like, if you feel like that hero is the only thing that's holding you down, sometimes the switch is going to be all it takes. So don't necessarily worry about making it worse. If you, like, make the call. Is that hero the problem? If I remove that problem, things will be good. Take that chance. If you think that that is the answer, try it. See if it works. And then if it doesn't work, hey, you learned something, if nothing else, right? Sometimes it will be the correct play. Try and keep it in the same role. But, like, if you think they're dominating and that's the thing, go for it. If you think that's going to be the thing that'll save it, give it a try. See if it works. And if not, you learned. Pairs, triplets of heroes to play and as a beginner. Oh. Looking to pick a definitive 2 or 3 champions. This is a League of Legends player. To really learn for each role, and ideally I want to pick a set that don't overlap in usage, so I can be as flexible as I can for my team. So I'd rather not learn them both. No, you should. I would say to learn right now. So what I'm gonna go is, I'm gonna go in each role. I'm gonna pick 3 heroes for each role. You should learn Rein, Zarya, D.Va. And the reason for that, or maybe Rein, Zarya, Winston. Feel free to change the D.Va or the Winston. And the reason for that is you've learned one hero that can do each thing. You've learned an anchor tank, who is most commonly not picked because people don't really like playing Reinhardt. You've learned to play a dive tank because in D.Va or Winston. So and then play Zarya, because then, supposing the other person does pick Reinhardt, you can pick Zarya to complement that person, because Zarya complements Reinhardt really well. Like, yeah, they're commonly picked together, but, like, they both do 2 really different things. Like, they don't, like, overlap in role very much. So, like, those, like, if you're gonna go tanks, Rein, Zarya, and then D.Va or Winston, you've learned one that can do everything, essentially, at that point. And Zarya is just, like, the off-tank that fits into almost every situation. That might become Roadhog in the near future, but, like, I know Zarya is that one right now, so that's what I'm gonna go with. DPS. Right now, McCree, but change that to Ashe when she comes out, because she's just gonna, like, she seems like she's gonna be really fucking strong. Ashe/McCree. One of the flankers, it doesn't really matter which one, just one of the flankers, and one of the defensive ones. It doesn't really matter which one, because again, you just got one that can do everything, right? So it would be like, I'd go Ashe, Genji, Junkrat, because they would, like, Genji is applicable in more situations than Tracer is usually. Genji also can, like, outplay people, even the people that counter him. Junkrat, very rarely the worst pick you can make. Just kind of fits in blanketly in a lot of situations. And Ashe is gonna be, like, ubiquitous. Like, she's gonna be fucking everywhere. And then supports, Moira. This is the hardest one to really say. Moira, definitely. It's probably Moira, Ana, and then Zenyatta or Bridget. Ana, or maybe just Ana. No, Ana, Moira, and then Zenyatta or Bridget. because Ana and Moira fit into almost all situations. It doesn't even matter if you have a main healer, you can still pick one of those as the other healer if you want to. And then Bridget or Zenyatta basically just based on personal preference, because, like, they both kind of do the same thing, but, like, in different ways. Like, Bridget fucks up flankers and disrupts people a lot, and then Zenyatta is basically Transcendent, stops my team from dying and makes my team better at killing people. Bridget can also make your team better at killing people. So it kind of just depends on, like, if you prefer the more passive style or the more aggressive style, but that's the one I'm, like, least confident on that answer for. Support's hard to answer that way, because there are a lot of heroes in the support role that do similar things. The support role, I think, is the most based on personal preference, really. Because I can imagine some people just being like, I hate Ana. I hate Moira. In which case, yeah, whatever. Then switch in a different one. Like, I'm very confident in the tank one. Like, that one I'm like 100% on. DPS I'm pretty set on. Like, there's a big, like, gap in heroes there, but, like, basically I'm saying, like, you want an all-rounder, which will usually be one of the hit scans, you want a flanker, and you want a defensive one. So, like, it doesn't really matter which one of those ones you pick. Like, all of the flankers do a similar thing, so it'll just be the one you personally like the most. And, like, all the defensive ones do something similar. They're all area denial. It just depends on which kind of area denial you personally favor, right? So, yeah, that's I think, what the best set would be for each role. Like, fair warning, though, as a beginner, some of those heroes are hard to play. So, that might be an issue. But, like, if we're just talking purely, like, the best, like, complementary ones to learn in terms of flexibility, those are, like, the ones, I think. What settings are Prun's using for Ashe? Who gives a shit? Alright, good job, team. It's an hour and a 15-minute video, so thank you very much for watching if you did. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to answer. If you haven't already, you can join our Discord and ask questions more directly and have a conversation about them, or just shitpost with us, and I hope you found the video helpful.